In this section, we'll write a shell script to keep the content synchronized between two disparate systems. On the one hand, we're operating on a Red Hat system, and on the other, we have a Debian system. The Debian system supports FTP connectivity amongst other types of connectivity, such as SSH. But what we'll do is write a script to keep content synchronized between the two hosts using LFTP, or using FTP, and LFTP's mirror functionality. Let's navigate into our temp2 directory. It contains all of our scripts. And here we have some files. Let's say, for example, we wanted to synchronize these files with the remote host. Now we can do a DUH to get a sense for the size. These files encompass, or total, 1.6 megabytes. But they're important, and we'd like to keep a backup running on some sort of interval basis between the two hosts. Well, there's a utility, an FTP, a great FTP utility, which we mention and show you how to use in both Linux CBT, Red Hat, and Debian editions. It's called LFTP. LFTP supports a function called mirroring, which can mirror as well as reverse mirror. We'll embed LFTP's capabilities into our shell script to accomplish the synchronization. So let's create a new shell script. We'll touch a new guy. We'll call this guy synchronize, or FTP synchronize .shell. And of course, we'll modify it with typical headers. And you know, the typical, we put in the author. And these are simple scripts, but very powerful, of course. Date is important, and purpose. This helps subsequent readers of your script. Folders between disparate hosts. Excellent. So how do we go about doing it? Well, there's a directory that's local that we'd like to keep synchronized, and there's also a remote directory. So we need to think the logic through. The local directory is called temp2, located in the root directory, and a remote host doesn't have an equivalent directory set up. Of course, we could create such a directory. So let's open another shell window and show you how the process would work manually. Always, before writing scripts or before actually authoring your scripts, examine the process manually. So we have this temp2 directory here. Let's FTP over using LFTP over to the Debian host, which is located at 192.168.1.20. We'll prefix it with the user. The user is actually called Linux CBT Debian with a password of ABC123 at 192.168.1.20. It'll prompt us for authentication, and we can ls there's nothing here. Now we should make a directory on the remote host called temp2. This will help us to synchronize. Now we have a directory called temp2. Excellent. And that's where we're going to deposit the files from our local host. In other words, perform the mirroring. Now LFTP, as I mentioned before, supports the mirror function. If you do help mirror, you'll see the options that are available. And LFTP also supports scripting, which is beautiful. So what we'll do is we'll make use of the mirroring functionality, and we'll make use of putting newer files with the -n option, and we'll also use the scripting capabilities of LFTP. So let's get the process working manually first. First and foremost, if we want to synchronize the files from here over to the remote host, we should LFTP in and run the mirror command. So let's do that. We'll LFTP in again, and we'll specify the password. And you know there's a temp2 directory. We'll go into temp2, and as is the case with any FTP client, if we prefix a command with the exclamation symbol, it will execute locally. So let's look at the directory locally. So locally, here are the files, and remotely, nothing exists within temp2. However, if we were to execute mirror-n, all the files locally would be sent to the remote host. So far we know that we need to actually instantiate a connection between our local host and the remote host, and we also need to run the mirror command, and then we need to follow it up by executing the script subsequently with new files or different files to ensure that mirroring is actually working. Excellent. So we have a sense of what we need to do. Now let's exit LFTP, and if we were to do, for example, LFTP help, you'll see that the -F option allows LFTP to accept commands from a script, which tells us that our LFTP script needs to contain commands. So what we should do is touch a file called, and it could be the same name, but we'll call this FTP synchronize.lftp. This subfile, or file that's called from the main script, will contain a few lines which will instruct LFTP. And we need to modify it. And this is the LFTP script. Now we need to specify what we need to do here, and it can be really easy. We can open the remote host prefix with the username. So we'll open LCBT Debian at 192.168. This is one way to do it. 1.20. And you can always verify these steps from the command line within LFTP. For example, if we opened a tab, typed LFTP, simply go open or help open. You'll see the syntax that's allowed. So for example, open, and the user in this case is LCBT Debian. Password in this case is ABC123. And the site is actually 192.168.1.20. And now it opens. So this particular script that this step that we've executed here gets put into our script. The way I've just specified, is also another way to do it. So the first thing is open the remote host. And then we can change our local directory to ensure that it's also in temp2. LCD temp2 will ensure that locally we're in temp2. If the script runs from outside of root's home directory, specify root temp2 to be certain. So we're opening the connection, we're changing on the remote host to temp2, we're changing our local directory to temp2, and then we're going to run the mirror command. Now we want to do a reverse mirror. We want to do a put in this case. So we're assuming that files are being updated locally and need to be published remotely. And the reverse command is uppercase R, or capital R. And we can also specify the lowercase n command, which sends only or puts only newer files. So this should do it for the script. We open the connection, change the directory on the remote host, change to the local temp2, and then we run the mirror. Let's save this file, and let's attempt to run LFTP with the -F option with the FTP synchronize LFTP command. Now if we go back here in lstemp2, you'll see that it's empty. Let's attempt to run the command. Excellent. It opened a connection. It doesn't seem like much has happened. We can even echo the error level. It came back nicely. Well, let's go back to the window where we have a connection open and lstemp2. Now, as you can see, there are many files on the remote system. We're connected to the remote Debian system. We can also open yet another window and SSH over to 192.168.1.20 to have a window open, at least on the remote system. Now we can use tilde expansion to go to LCBT Debian's home directory. And as you can see, there's a temp2 directory. And there are many files in there. These files were just created on the system. They were just uploaded at 1447. And of course, on the remote host, it's 1448. It's out of sync with the local clock. So the mirroring is working. It's uploading the files, or it has uploaded the files manually. Now let's remove all the files here so that we can do this from the script. Excellent, they're gone. And we still have this connection open, but we know at least our LFTP will work when it reads the FTP synchronize.lftp file. So now we need to put this back into our bash script. So we'll tell the bash script to run lftp file, and the name of the file is ftp synchronize.shell or .lftp. Now it's good to put this information, of course, into variables so that if things change, it helps. Excellent. So let's do so. we'll define a variable. This one will be called LFTP script, and it's equal to FTP synchronize .lftp. That's the name of the script for LFTP. So that here we'll specify LFTP script to tell LFTP to run. You can also do other things like script directory or home directory or something to that effect to prefix it just in case it changes, or to make the script more portable. Currently this all assumes that everything's in the same directory. So let's make another variable. We'll call it script home, and it's equivalent to /root/temp2, and we'll prefix anything that we run with script home. So you could prefix it here, for example, pass a variable into a variable, and this will be script home / the name of the script, so that when LFTP actually gets a hold of it, it's actually going to substitute in everything. Root temp2 FTP synchronize.lftp. So far it looks simple, but this will keep things mirrored. Now let's exit, and we'll run FTP synchronize.shell. Creates a connection. Now it echoed bad command. Let's see what that's about. We can check our remote host to see if anything's been written. Well, the files have been written. So we saw a bad command, may not be anything. Actually, it was copying the file badcommand.shell. But it has mirrored. We can LSL here to see the date. And according to the Debian system, these files were just written, 1450. We can remove them again and redo it. If we LSL, they're all gone. Let's rerun our shell script, which is located in one of these windows. Let's clean up some of the windows here, since they're far too many. And the first window, we source FTP synchronize.shell. And when it runs, it just shows, it echoes that it actually is copying files, so there were no errors. We can echo the exit status, it comes back nicely. And on the Debian system, the files are actually there. They get written automatically. Let's remove everything here again. And this time, we'll actually change, or we'll touch a new file. Let's touch new file 1.txt. Then run the script, and then we'll ensure that new file 1.txt exists on the remote host. The remote host has all the files. If we LSLTR, we'll see everything here. But let's LSL new files, and there it is. Now let's create a new file to show the difference in the purpose of this exercise. Let's touch new file, and we'll use some brace expansion 2, 3, 4, 5. This has created a few new files. So we have 1 through 5, but 1 through 5 do not exist on the remote host. Let's do new file star.txt. There's only new file 1, so there is a difference. Let's synchronize. Now, if we go back, pay attention to the date stamp, 1452 for all the files that were copied in the last iteration. Let's LSL new file star.txt. New files 1 through 5 were copied at 1453. However, let's LSL everything, and you'll see the other files were not touched, so the mirror command will only upload or put files that are different, whereas the new file 1 through 5 were actually different. So what this means is as follows. Mirroring is working. Now if you wanted to do a reverse mirror, it's simple. Or if you want to do a forward mirror, a typical mirror, it's simple. Currently our FTP synchronize.lftp file contains mirror-rn. Just take off the R option, and then the mirroring occurs on a poll basis, which is quite common. Additionally, this is the sort of script you may want to run on some sort of interval basis. If you were to simply copy the two files, or in this case just the main shell script, because the shell script has a pointer to the LFTP file, so if you were to copy FTP synchronize.shell into etc cron.hourly, for example, it would run every hour or daily. So you can at least get it to run on some sort of interval basis. But that's a simple script, but the power was realized by using LFTP. In other words, part of shell scripting, or part of the art of shell scripting, is being able to concoct these types of solutions based on the skills or based on the expertise of different scripts, different binaries. So you want to be able to take the best of breed scripts, applications, binaries to come up with your solution. But now at least we can synchronize content on a push or pull basis. If you want to do pull, just remove the R option and you're good to go.